So we'll do the next round of things here. We have Jordan, who's actually going to give his keynote address. Jordan, as I told you before, is one of the persons who's been really a reflection of the ideas that we have actually discussed here. So may I actually invite Jordan to actually present his keynote. In fact, at this stage, I would also like to thank the partners and all the people who have supported this thing. I really have to personally thank Wilfred, who's at the back, whose flight was delayed, so he was not here in the morning to welcome. But I think I have to thank Wilfred for supporting and really making this possible. Anurag from BW Business World to really help us really put this together as well. So before further ado, Jordan, can we have you on the stage, please?
Thank you, Professor Kapoor. Thank you, Raj, for that really remarkable speech. It was very enlightening. I enjoyed it a lot. And hopefully I'll give some shape to some of the tenets that you shared with us in your talk. I'd also like to thank Anshu Taneja from Vision Spring, who runs Vision Spring, the Vision Spring team who's here, our partners who work with Vision Spring who are in the audience, and friends. It's a pleasure to be here and talk to you a little bit about my journey toward Vision Spring and starting a social enterprise to help people see better throughout the world. My journey started when I was 23 years old. I was studying to be an eye doctor in Boston, Massachusetts, and learned about an organization that brought eye care to underserved populations in rural Latin America. And as soon as I heard about it, it sounded really intriguing, and so I signed up and earned a position on that trip. And we made our way down to the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, in Merida, Mexico, and my very first patient was a 7-year-old boy, and he was from the School for the Blind. And there he was sitting across from me, a first-year student, so I knew not much about the eye, and he, a 7-year-old person who thought he was blind, his parents thought he was blind, his community thought he was blind. In taking a look at his eyes, I knew enough to know that there was something fishy, and so I called the professor over, and after she took a close look at this boy, she turned back to me and said, "Jordan, this boy isn't blind. He's just profoundly nearsighted. He needed a prescription of a -20, which basically meant he couldn't see more than an inch from his nose. So he was functionally blind. But he could see if he had access to the proper pair of glasses." We had brought thousands of glasses categorized by strength, and I went to the strongest box, and sure enough, there was a pair that was 80% match. And I was the lucky person to put that first pair of glasses on that boy's face. And you can imagine when the lenses aligned with his eyes, this blank stare of a blind child transformed into one of the most beautiful smiles of joy that you'll ever see. And it was a remarkable moment that changed both of our lives. I gave him his vision, and he gave me mine. He gave me a vision of deep meaning, of what it meant to be able to live a life of deep meaning. And I knew at that instant that if I could just recreate that moment over and over again, I would be a successful person. Whether I had 1 car or 5 cars, 1 house or 5 houses, if I kept providing such an essential product, which was vision and the sense of vision, to people who didn't have it, I would by definition be a happy and successful person. And I felt that truth very deeply at that moment. My journey then took me to other parts of Latin America as my education proceeded. And the next story I want to share with you happened in Choco, Colombia, which is one of the poorest states in Colombia. The Choco Indians live throughout this area, and there I was in the throes of another busy clinic week, and a 43-year-old Choco Indian woman dressed in traditional garb was my next patient, and she was also known as the blind lady from the village. And she told us she was never able to see properly. She heard about a bunch of American eye doctors coming to provide services, so she canoed one day down the river to be in front of me. And sure enough, her prescription also, she couldn't see the big E on the eye chart. She had a -8 prescription with a lot of astigmatism. And we did the exam and we fit her with a pair of glasses and she saw perfectly, 20/20 for the first time in her life. And we were all very proud of ourselves. We gave ourselves high fives. Another person saved, and she went back into the river, into her canoe, and canoed back upriver. 2 days later, that same lady was in front of me, not looking very happy. And what she told us is when she got back to her community, everybody laughed at her because her glasses looked so ridiculous, and she felt really deeply ostracized by her community. And the fact of the matter was that she was right, because the only pair of glasses that we had that matched her very unusual prescription were a 1950s pair of cat-eye glasses with rhinestones. And they looked ridiculous on her. It didn't look at all culturally appropriate. And we explained to her she had a very unusual prescription. This was the only pair that closely matched what she needed. And then she did something that blew all of our minds. She took those glasses off her face, she put them down on a wooden table, she went back into her canoe and went back upriver, preferring to be blind than to be ostracized and to be culturally inappropriate. And it just stopped me in my tracks, and I said, okay, we're doing obviously something wrong here. If someone is choosing blindness over what we're providing, we've got to rethink our model. And our model was basically taking donated products and from people in America and matching them to people in underserved parts of the world and giving them out for free. And we were losing the whole market dynamic of dignity. And when I started to think, well, if we charged some money for the glasses, albeit a small amount so that the person could afford it and that they were priced appropriately, then it would be our obligation to ensure that we were designing and developing products and services that were aspirational and desired by the people who we were trying to sell to. If we didn't do that, then they wouldn't pay for it. They just would vote with their wallet. So it changed the power structure and the power dynamic by saying, well, if we charge for the glasses, then we're partners. And rather than it being a handout, it becomes more of a handshake with your partner who's the recipient of your services and your products. So that became a very important philosophy to me, although a lot of the people in my organization didn't agree with that. And so we had a lot of heated debate, and I was a real, what we call in the United States, buzzkill. Oh, there comes Jordan, let's go sit at the other table because he's going to tell us that we're not doing this thing right. So after I finished school, I wanted to find other people who were of similar mindset to me, and I researched, and I found out about an incredible man from India, a man named Dr. Venkataswamy. And maybe some of you have heard of him. Certainly you've heard of his organization that he started, which is called the Aravind Eye Hospital. And I wrote away to Dr. V, and I said, if you provide me with room and board in Madurai for a year, I will come and volunteer my time to learn from you and to teach and to be as helpful as I can. And luckily he said yes. And so I learned from Dr. V the concepts and the tenets of compassionate capitalism, conscious capitalism, that you can provide these goods and services to the poorest people on the planet with a sense of dignity. You could also charge people who had a little bit more resources a little bit more, and you could do some cross-subsidization when necessary. And so there were some incredible models that I learned from the Aravind Eye Hospital, and I took those lessons away with me as I continued my journey. My next stop in my journey was working with a different disease called river blindness in Africa, a terrible disease, infectious disease of the eye where worms get into the eye. And I remember there we were trying to find people who were at risk of the disease, and all we needed was to put one pill in everyone's mouth who had the disease or were in an area who was at risk of the disease. So that was our job, is to figure out where the disease was and to distribute this drug called Mectizan. And there I was in the Sanaga River Valley of Cameroon, talking to a woman who was a farmer. She was an illiterate farmer. And I was asking her, because I asked people wherever I traveled, whether it was Latin America, India, or Africa, what do you really need? What do you need to make you happy? And you would hear the normal list of better health care, better education, better housing, better agriculture, clean water. But this woman had a different answer that really, again, stopped me in my tracks. And she said, well, what we need is just what you need, and that's opportunity. Because if I had opportunity, then I could get all the other things like healthcare and water. I, like you, want to be self-reliant. So I would just need opportunity, and that's what the people in our country need, is more opportunities. So I started to put all of these observations together and started to look at, from the eye care world, one thing I was noticing was that a lot of people who were earning their living with their eyes and hands, weavers, tailors, artisans, mechanics, barbers, were starting to lose their ability to work as they got into their middle age. As many of you know, that as you get into your 40s, your near vision gets less precise. And so when you earn your living with your eyes and hands, making saris and so forth, and you can't see the fine details, you start losing the ability to be as productive and earn your livelihood. And that's all for the lack of getting a simple pair of eyeglasses that in America you can buy at the corner drugstore, the +1, +2, +3 reading glasses. It's a consumer product in the West. It costs less than $1 to source in China, but meanwhile I saw millions of people losing their livelihoods, losing their productivity, losing their opportunities to be self-reliant because of a lack of something so simple that wasn't distributed or available in their communities. I also saw a lack of opportunity, huge numbers of people, particularly women, who were underemployed or unemployed. And so I put the two together and said, well, why couldn't we just train local women in these communities to sell those simplest glasses that, again, in the West are consumer products where people self-prescribe. And we can teach them how to screen for people who need more complicated glasses versus the simple glasses, refer the people who need more complicated prescriptions or cataract surgeries on to partners, and pay and charge for the simple reading glasses so they can make a little money and people can get access to that product. As I was thinking about this, I had the opportunity to meet a very wealthy philanthropist in New York, a man probably many of you know, a man named George Soros. And I was telling him about this idea. And he loved the idea. And he, in an instant, basically said, we want to support you. We want to give you $50,000 to test that idea in reality. And so we tested it in South India, in Hyderabad, where we trained 18 women to take on this role, and we followed them. And what we found was that 6 women made some money, 6 lost some money, and 6 more or less broke even. And we've been iterating this model ever since. We learned that it was very difficult to just be a one-product company, so our model has iterated that just simple business in a bag for a woman selling just reading glasses didn't end up being the model that we took to market. Although we tested it and we learned many lessons, like people will pay a few dollars for glasses, people will buy them from doctors as long as they were buying them from someone who they trusted and from organizations that they trusted, that price and quality matter and that style matters, as we learned in Columbia years ago. And so we've started to take these models and iterate them. And now in India we have 3 models that exist. One is we have our own retail stores. We have about 13 retail stores where we charge lower than most optical stores for very high quality but low cost products. And we have a sort of like an Aravind cross-subsidization model. Some people pay a little bit more, some people pay less so that we can make the numbers go around. We have a wholesale business where we provide glasses to other partners in hospitals like the Aravind Eye Hospital and many others around India, where we charge for both reading glasses and prescription glasses on a wholesale basis. And the third area is what we call our corporate projects. And many of the people in this audience are partners of ours, where we do, in essence, CSR impact consulting. So for organizations that have impact dollars or CSR dollars to invest, and obviously you want to maximize the impact of those dollars, Vision Spring will come in and work with you to develop eye camps and screening programs and eyeglass provision programs for employees, for communities that you as an organization care about, and we'll do it in a very efficient, very dignified way to provide, again, eye care and eyeglass services to people who don't have them otherwise. And so we have partnered with a number of people in this audience, Sulon and ICICI Bank and Mahindra and other great organizations and some of the Tata companies, and we look forward to continue to grow that. It's become a very successful model for us. So that's in a nutshell what Vision Spring has been doing. Just to give you a sense of our reach, as an organization, global organization, we've reached 3.2 million people. India is one of 20 countries where we work, although it is our largest country. In India, this year, or last year I should say, we helped 500,000 people get eyeglasses, and in total we've helped about 1.2 million people in India over the last 8 years. And under Mr. Taneja's very capable leadership, we hope to continue to expand that very greatly, because the need, we've just started to scratch the surface of the need. So I'll stop there, and we'll go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. Thanks a lot.